From major champions who couldn't even make it to the weekend, to superstars who completely cracked under pressure. These are the biggest golfing flops of the 2025 season. What happens when you hand the Ryder Cup captaincy to someone with zero leadership experience and watch them make the same catastrophic mistakes over and over again? You get the first European victory on American soil in 13 years, and a captain who called it the darkest time of his life. Keegan Bradley's captaincy at Bethpage Black wasn't just a failure. It was a masterclass in how stubbornness can sink an entire team on home turf. Despite winning the Travelers' Championship earlier in the year, Bradley's strategic blunders turned what should have been an American celebration into a European coronation. The numbers tell a brutal story. Europe demolished the United States 15-13, and Bradley's fingerprints were all over the carnage. His most criticized decision? Pairing Colin Morikawa and Harris English in foursomes, not once but twice, on both Friday and Saturday. That pairing got destroyed both times by Rory McIlroy and Tommy Fleetwood, losing 5-4 on Friday and 3-2 on Saturday. Here's the kicker. Data Golf's statistical model showed that English and Morikawa was one of the least effective possible American pairings out of all 132 combinations. Bradley had 132 options and kept returning to one of the absolute worst. The first day was complete carnage. Jon Rahm and Tyrrell Hatton won 4 and 3. McIlroy and Fleetwood crushed their opponents 5 and 4. Ludwig Oberg and Matt Fitzpatrick dominated 5 and 3. Scottie Scheffler became the first American ever to lose in each of the first 4 Ryder Cup sessions. After the loss, Bradley gave himself an F. Betting markets had shifted toward Europe the moment his pairings were announced. A damning vote of no confidence that proved prophetic. On to the next. Take a look at these opening round scores from the last 8 majors. 78, 73, 74, 78, 75, 73. That's not a weekend hacker's nightmare. That's a 2-time major champion and former world number 1 completely falling apart when it matters most. Dustin Johnson insisted late in the summer that he'd found something in his game. And he did manage a season-best 3rd place at LIV Indianapolis. But strip away the LIV victories against weakened fields, and what's left is a major championship performer who's become a significant flop for a 2nd straight year. The major statistics are eye-wateringly bad. Johnson missed the cut at the Masters with rounds of 74 and 73. He missed the cut at the PGA Championship after opening with a brutal 78 and following with 76. He missed the cut at the US Open with back-to-back 75s. At 40 years old, he finally made a weekend at the Open Championship and managed tied 23rd. Hardly the performance expected from someone of his pedigree. Context makes it worse. Johnson's greens and regulation percentage hovered around 58 to 62% throughout the year, well below the level needed to contend in elite fields. His putting and bogey avoidance metrics were equally weak, contributing to scoring that looked more recreational than professional. This is a player who captured the US Open in 2016 and the Masters in 2020. A player who dominated the world rankings for years. Now he's captaining 4 Aces GC on LIV Golf, while producing individual results that wouldn't crack a college leaderboard. When your best opening round in 8 consecutive majors is a 73, you're not unlucky, you're broken. Next up, the Netflix cameras captured his charm, his humor, and his everyman appeal on full swing. Unfortunately for Joel Dahmen, they also captured the beginning of his professional freefall. Dahmen had been walking a tightrope for years on the PGA Tour, and in 2025, he finally lost his balance. After making a career as a fan favorite and steady tour presence, he crashed spectacularly, missing the cut in 16 of 28 events he played. That's over 50% of his starts ending before the weekend even began. His final FedEx Cup ranking told the whole story, 122nd. That performance left him outside full tour status and forced to survive on conditional exemptions. A brutal reality for a veteran who'd become one of golf's most recognizable personalities. The season had moments that hinted at something better. A tied 2nd at the Corrales Punta Cana Championship and a tied 6th at the Mexico Open showed flashes of the player who'd won before. But those moments were buried under an avalanche of mediocrity. The Corrales collapse perfectly captured his year. Dahmen entered the final round with a 3-shot lead and proceeded to fall apart down the stretch, finishing 1 shot behind. He later called the performance inexcusable, a word that applied to much of his season. Adding to the chaos, Dahmen split with his longtime caddy Gino Bonalé mid-season, severing a relationship that had been featured prominently on television. His world ranking plummeted to around 197, and he missed cuts at tournaments like the Procore Championship, Sanderson Farms, and the Bank of Utah Championship. All right, picture this. You've just won the US Open at one of America's most prestigious clubs. Fast forward 2 years, and you're banned from another historic venue after trashing their locker room in a rage. The Colorado golfer came into the season as a 2023 US Open champion with legitimate star potential. Instead, he delivered 0 wins, only 2 top 10 finishes in 21 starts, and a FedEx Cup finish of 56th, a catastrophic drop from 3rd place in 2023. His major championship performances range from disappointing to non-existent. At the US Open at Oakmont, Clark missed the cut with rounds of 74 and 74, finishing 8 over par. The missed cut was bad enough. What happened next was worse. After his exit, Clark damaged lockers in the Oakmont clubhouse in a fit of frustration. The club responded by banning him from the premises until he meets specific conditions: repayment for damages, a meaningful charity donation, and counseling. Getting banned from one of golf's cathedral venues isn't just embarrassing, it's career-defining in all the wrong ways. The temperament issues weren't isolated. Earlier at the PGA Championship, Clark threw his driver in anger and nearly hit a volunteer, forcing him to issue a groveling apology. The pattern was clear: a player struggling with both results and emotional control. His overall statistics matched the chaos. Strokes gained sat at just 0.289, far below his previous form. He did manage tied 4th at the Open Championship, but one decent week doesn't rebuild a shattered reputation. Trashing furniture doesn't make you a competitor. It makes you a cautionary tale. Up next, there are few golfers more popular than the Californian 6-time PGA Tour winner. But in 2025, something went terribly wrong. Max Homa openly admitted that golf does not like me at the moment early in the season, and the game spent the next 12 months proving him absolutely right. The likable social media star delivered 0 wins in 24 starts, missed 8 cuts, and finished 111th in the FedEx Cup standings. A shocking collapse for someone who'd finished back-to-back major top 10s just a year earlier. The missed cut streak became legendary for all the wrong reasons. Homa went through 5 consecutive tournaments without making a weekend, a stretch that included brutal performances like 76 and 75 at one event and 79 and 71 at another. His world ranking cratered to around 117, and he earned just $1.35 million. Modest numbers for a supposed star. Only 2 top 10 finishes materialized all year. His best came at the John Deere Classic, where he finished tied 5th, but Homa himself called it super disappointing because he'd been in contention and let it slip away on Sunday. That perfectly captured his season. Close enough to taste success, never good enough to grab it. The Masters delivered a respectable tied 12th, but he failed to even qualify for the US Open, losing a playoff at qualifying and carrying his own bag for 36 holes. A humbling visual for an established tour player. In April, Homa split with longtime caddy Joe Greiner, severing another connection to his successful past. The changes kept coming, but the results never improved. Sometimes golf stops liking you back, and sometimes it ghosts you for an entire year. Coming to the next one, let's talk about a player who spent 8 seasons racking up 26 top 3 finishes, then suddenly forgot how to contend. Patrick Cantlay entered 2025 as one of golf's most consistent threats, a player who'd notched 7 top 3 finishes in 2022 alone. The 33-year-old had made a career out of being there when tournaments reached their climax. Then the floor collapsed. 1 top 3 finish in the entire season. 1. And while it was lucrative, tied 2nd at the Tour Championship, earning him millions, it represented a catastrophic fall from elite consistency. That single result pushed him to 2nd on the money list with $9.44 million, creating the bizarre optics of financial success masking competitive failure. The major championships exposed the cracks completely. Cantlay missed the cut at 3 of 4 majors, including rounds of 74 and 74 at the PGA Championship, 8 over at the US Open, and 3 over at the Open Championship. For a perennial contender, missing 3 major weekends isn't a slump. It's a pattern. His winless drought extended to 3 full years, with his last victory coming back in 2022. Even his respectable finishes, tied 4th at the Truist Championship, tied 9 at the FedEx St. Jude Championship, felt hollow without a single trophy. Cantlay even added a new putting coach mid-season, a clear signal that something fundamental had broken. Being second on the money list means nothing when you've forgotten how to win. All right, we move on to a player whose playoff presence sparked more controversy than celebration. Rickie Fowler impressed when finishing 6th and 7th at the St. Jude Championship and BMW Championship in the FedEx Cup playoffs. The problem? Many observers were absolutely furious that he was even there. The 36-year-old had managed only one top 10 in the entire regular season before those playoff finishes. 1. For a former world number 4 and 6-time tour winner, that's not underperforming. That's barely surviving. But here's where the controversy exploded. Fowler had played numerous tournaments on sponsor invitations rather than earned starts, giving him what critics called an unfair advantage over players who had to qualify on merit. The numbers backing up his season were brutal. Fowler made 18 cuts and 21 starts, but rarely sniffed contention. His strokes gained statistics sat at 0.162 off the tee, ranking 65th on tour with negative approach numbers and flat putting metrics. His greens and regulation percentage hovered around 64%, respectable but far from elite. His best non-playoff result was tied 14th at the Open Championship, showing he could still compete in majors. But his overall scoring average of 70.5 reflected a player stuck firmly in the middle of the pack. Finishing 32nd on the money list with $3.44 million looked impressive on paper. In reality, it represented a player who'd gamed the system with borrowed invitations while producing minimal results. Sponsor exemptions aren't charity. They are supposed to reward past greatness, not subsidize present mediocrity. Next up, here's a player who went from Ryder Cup hopeful to Q-School failure in the span of 3 brutal years. Yannick Paul claimed his first DP World Tour win in late 2022 and added a trio of top 3 finishes in 2023, putting him on many short lists for the European Ryder Cup team. 2025 was different, very different. In 27 starts, Paul managed only one top 30 finish. 1. His world ranking plummeted to around 348, and he failed to retain his DP World Tour card after finishing outside the top 115 on the Race to Dubai list. The Genesis Championship sealed his fate when he opened with a disastrous 79, crushing any hopes of climbing back into safety. His best result all season was tied 3rd at the Volvo China Open, a fleeting glimpse of competence in an ocean of mediocrity. Losing his tour card meant heading to Q-School to try earning it back. Paul missed the cut there too, completing one of the most devastating double collapses in recent memory. His statistics reflected the struggles. Negative strokes gained off the tee and consistent finishes well down leaderboards, including tied 56 at the BMW Australian PGA Championship. The fall from Ryder Cup contention to failing Q-School takes exactly one catastrophic season. Up next, let's examine the silent slide of a 6-time PGA Tour winner who somehow forgot how to finish tournaments. Tony Finau went from tied 23rd in the FedEx Cup rankings in 2024 to 83rd in 2025. That's not a minor dip. That's a free fall for a player who'd been one of the tour's most reliable performers for years. The statistics tell a damning story. Tony recorded only one top 10 finish during the entire season. 1. In 20 tournaments, he missed 5 cuts, a failure rate that would embarrass a rookie trying to keep his card. For someone who'd won 6 times on tour and built a reputation as a consistent contender, producing virtually nothing represents a complete system failure. The consequences extend beyond just pride. Tony will now have to qualify for majors and signature events instead of getting automatic entries, a humbling reality for someone who was once a fixture in golf's biggest tournaments. His world ranking dropped accordingly, reflecting a player who'd become irrelevant in conversations about elite golf. What makes Tony's collapse particularly baffling is that he possesses all the tools needed to succeed. The length off the tee, the iron play, the putting stroke, everything's still there mechanically. But none of it translated into results when scorecards actually mattered. When a 6-time winner forgets how to crack the top 10, that's not a slump. That's a crisis of confidence that infected an entire season. All right, we move on to one of the world's finest golfers who somehow can't perform when it actually matters. Make absolutely no mistake, Joaquin Niemann is supremely talented, and he proved it time and again in 2025 by winning 5 times on LIV Golf. 5 victories at Adelaide, Singapore, Mexico City, Virginia, and LIV UK. He dominated the circuit, earning over $22 million and hitting 196 birdies, second only to Jon Rahm. But here's the uncomfortable truth about LIV Golf. Beating that field doesn't mean beating the world's best players. Strip away Bryson DeChambeau and maybe 1 or 2 others, and you're left with a competition level that's significantly weaker than PGA Tour events or major championships. Niemann's major championship record exposes this reality brutally. He's played in 26 majors and landed only 1 top 20 finish. 1. That came at the 2025 PGA Championship, where he finished tied 8th, largely thanks to a final round 68. Then, he missed the cut at both the US Open and the Open Championship, re-establishing his elite-level difficulties. His Masters scoring average sits above par, and sub-70 rounds at majors are rare, suggesting he simply doesn't handle championship setups the way top contenders do. Reports even described fans questioning his temperament after missing the cut at the Open, where frustration boiled over visibly. Dominating the minor leagues doesn't make you a major champion. It makes you a big fish feasting in a very small pond. Coming to the next one, here's a fall from grace that went from one extreme to another in just 12 months. Sahith Theegala finished 3rd in the FedEx Cup rankings in 2024, establishing himself as one of the tour's rising stars. Then 2025 happened, and he plummeted to 146th. That's not a decline, that's a nosedive. 0 top 10 finishes. 0. In 23 tournaments played, Theegala managed only 2 top 25 results, with 6 missed cuts scattered throughout the season. For a player who'd been knocking on the door of elite status, those numbers represent complete collapse. The injury narrative became his shield. Theegala withdrew from the Truist Championship and the PGA Championship due to a recurring neck injury, which interrupted his rhythm at crucial moments. His best early result was tied 17th at the Genesis Invitational, followed by months of mediocrity, including tied 53 at the AT&T Pebble Beach and tied 52 at the Farmers Insurance Open. His world ranking dropped to around 67th, and his FedEx Cup position meant he barely retained his tour card, and only because of his 2023 Fortinet Championship victory providing temporary exemption status. But here's the problem with the injury excuse. It explains some weeks, maybe even a month or 2. It doesn't explain 23 tournaments of consistent failure. Neck problems don't cause you to miss cuts at multiple events when you're supposedly healthy enough to compete. Injury is a reason. It's not a blanket pardon for an entire season of irrelevance. Next up, let's discuss the eerie parallels between 2 young phenoms who both peaked early and then settled into frustrating mediocrity. Collin Morikawa is starting to mirror Jordan Spieth's career trajectory in uncomfortable ways. Both captured major championships early, both looked destined for sustained dominance, and both have since plateaued into very solid but unspectacular professionals who can't recapture their early magic. The 28-year-old Morikawa hasn't won since October 2023. He started 2025 ranked 5th in data golf and finished at 26th, a slide that reflects his inability to close tournaments despite possessing one of golf's most elite skill sets. In his last 14 starts, Morikawa recorded just 1 top 10 finish, tied 8th at the Rocket Mortgage Classic. The rest featured forgettable results like tied 43 at the Procore Championship and tied 33 at the BMW Championship. He posted 2 runner-up finishes at the Century and Arnold Palmer Invitational, briefly suggesting a breakthrough was coming. Instead, he proved incapable of closing either tournament, watching victories slip away when champions separate themselves from contenders. His major results were equally uninspiring. Tied 14th at the Masters was respectable but not threatening. Missing the cut at the Open Championship underlined the inconsistency plaguing his game. The iron play remains phenomenal. 3rd on tour in strokes gained approach, but he lost ground with the putter and around the greens, the areas where championships are won. He even split with caddy Joe Greiner and changed putters multiple times. The best iron player in golf discovered that championships aren't won from 150 yards out. Up next, there's something uniquely brutal about watching an 11-year streak die in real time. Adam Hadwin had never lost his PGA Tour card since joining in 2015. For over a decade, he'd been a model of consistency. making cuts, cashing checks, and qualifying for the FedEx Cup playoffs year after year. 2025 shattered that streak in the most painful way possible. The Canadian veteran missed 12 cuts in 29 tournaments. That's over 40% of his starts ending before the weekend. A failure rate that would embarrass players fighting for their first card, let alone a seasoned tour member with multiple wins on his resume. His final FedEx Cup position told the brutal truth: 139th. He needed to finish in the top 125 to retain full status. He missed by 14 spots, and those 14 spots represent the difference between security and scrambling for conditional exemptions. Hadwin's best result was tied 9th at the WM Phoenix Open early in the season, a finish that briefly suggested he'd find his form. Instead, that became his only top 10 all year. He added a tied 12th at the Zurich Classic late in the season, but those modest results couldn't save a drowning campaign. His world ranking collapsed to around 222, and his strokes gained metrics showed negative numbers off the tee and on approach. At the Valspar Championship, frustration boiled over when Hadwin struck the ground in anger and accidentally hit a sprinkler head with his club. 11 years of consistency erased by 12 months of chaos. All right, we move on to the cruelest flop of them all, the comeback that never came. At the end of 2024, Tiger Woods publicly announced his goal: play at least one tournament per month in 2025. Fans worldwide shared that optimism, dreaming of watching the 15-time major champion compete regularly again. Then reality intervened with surgical precision. Actual tournaments played in 2025? 0. Woods ruptured his left Achilles tendon in March while training, requiring surgery and ending any hopes of returning to competition. But the injuries didn't stop there. He also underwent his 7th back surgery to replace a collapsed disc, compounding the physical devastation and ruling out the entire season. The man who dominated golf for 2 decades hasn't played a competitive PGA Tour event since missing the cut at the 2024 Open Championship. Instead of tournament rounds, his year involved promoting the Hero World Challenge, working on TGL, the tech-driven indoor league he co-founded with Rory McIlroy, and watching from the sidelines. Woods even joked about playing 25 tournaments across both the PGA Tour and PGA Tour Champions after turning 50 on December 30th. He quickly clarified that his back still felt wonky and acknowledged that recovery from disc replacement takes time. He's been cleared for chipping and putting, but remains nowhere near competitive fitness. He also missed the PNC Championship with his son Charlie, another painful absence for fans hoping to see him play anywhere. The fire might still burn inside Tiger Woods, but the body stopped listening 3 surgeries ago, and no amount of determination can override biology.